Welcome back, friends. I hope you're enjoying summer or have enjoyed summer as much as me. It looks like it's coming to an end, though today is a bit of a juggling act for me because the kids haven't gone back yet, but all summer camps are closed, and so Luke is quote unquote assisting me in my efforts to do ministry today. In addition, of course, we're doing all of those prep tasks that are required, including the forms and the parent things you do prior to the kids actually coming to school, which are all online now. So I just have to figure out how to log on to this portal. So that's where I'm at. And you could say, in conjunction with my sermon on Sunday, that I am somewhat held captive by the responsibilities of today leading into tomorrow, which is an exciting day, the first day of school. All these kids are probably a mixture of anxious and excited. I think at Luke's age, more excited to be with friends and a large number of people with his energy level. But of course, I remember as I got older, there was a bit of anxiety as well. So I want us to keep in mind and keep in our hearts and in our prayers all the parents, all the kids that are returning to school this week. This Sunday, of course, as you know, we're having a blessing of the backpacks. And so we're excited for that. But as I mentioned, I spoke a little bit about captivity and the different kinds of captivities, because there's a phrase in the letter to the community in Ephesians that reads, God takes captivity captive. It's a rather odd phrase. It's not one that we would use typically. And of course, it begs the question, what does it mean to take captivity captive, right? How do you hold captivity? It's an interesting kind of turn of phrase. So that was what my reflection was on, is that what does it mean to be delivered from forms of captivity and delivered over into maybe a binding arrangement, a covenant, an agreement that actually leads us to abundance? I think it strikes against some of the, let us say, modern or postmodern sensibilities that take freedom to mean the ability to do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want. This kind of deliverance or taking captivity captive is a release into a form of relationship and a bond that isn't the ability or the freedom to do whatever you want, but it's the freedom for relationship and to be with other people. And that's the kind of abundance that the Bible often references, and that I think Paul is talking about, because this phrase is used in the context of a discussion on what community is, right? It's acknowledging this common aspiration, one God, one faith, one church, so there's this oneness, which is an aspirational oneness. We've talked about that recently, right? It's a universal aspiration to belong, to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And we are reminded that this new commitment, which is labor and hard work and commitment, is perhaps a form of taking those other captivities that keep us from that relationship. It's a way of being delivered from them. And I talked about an unhealthy captivity, these other captivities, plural, being ways of dissociating. By dissociating, I just mean severing ties, not being in relationship, being removed from connection and companionship, which we all need and are created in and for. So if that is what unhealthy captivity means, then what is this other form of captivity, this kind of binding, this seizure by the Spirit, by God's call? Because when we come here, there is a sense in which we are exhorted to commit, to give ourselves heart, mind, and soul to this promise, to this vision, this way of being in the world that we very much hope and pray will lead to great transformation for all people. So our commitment to and our binding to this great divine exhortation is the deliverance from those other forms of captivity. And I hope that you're able to take some of that with you this week and reflect on what in your life perhaps keeps you from relationship, right? Like what actually has you captive that may be unconscious right now? What is holding your attention a bit more than it should? It could be these smartphones. I know that's probably true for me. I'm on a bit of a leash, right? Constantly checking email, this, that, and the other. It may be something else, something a bit more intense and severe and obvious, but there are countless ways in which we are tempted to dissociate on a daily basis because life is hard. There's a lot of awful things out there, some of which we ourselves have encountered. But I want to invite you to consider this other form of being bound, which is a kind of abundance. It's that fruitful life, that life of joy and commitment, which we can't even see outside of our willingness to step forward. What Kierkegaard called that leap of faith, right? Once we commit ourselves, then it doesn't feel like captivity, but it is a binding. And so I hope you're able to carry that with you, meditate on it, and send me any questions. Let's talk about this anytime you want. So glad you joined me this week. Join me next week as well. We're going to reflect a little bit on all this big homecoming stuff that's coming up, and don't want you to miss it. It's going to be a great Sunday.